Hi, this is Reese Waters from Off Center. This episode, I defend Russia. We talk about getting dumped, and we set new street fight rules. Plus, ESPN NFL's Jeff Dickerson and I discuss what movie drove us to drink in the theater. Download in the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
TGIF, coming up on the First Take podcast on a Friday. Is LeBron's major payday good for the NBA? Plus, it's A-Rod's final game as a Yankee. Stephen A. and Max debate what should happen tonight. And is Carmelo Anthony actually okay with 3 gold medals and 0 NBA titles? We'll get into it. Let's get it started.
Yo, what up to my fans out there, man? Y'all already know anytime I got anything new or exclusive, I'm bringing it to y'all first. So, I just want to let y'all know, man, I'm re-signing back with the Cleveland Cavaliers, man. My hometown team. I can't be more excited in this opportunity once again, man, to defend our crown, defend our title. And we all know last year was a magical, inspiring, all the words you could come up with, man. It was an unbelievable season. And I just can't wait to get the group back together, man. The team, the franchise, but more importantly, get everybody together. The fans. Without you guys, without y'all passion and commitment, man, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did this past season. So I'm ecstatic. I can't wait to see my guys. I can't wait to get back out there in the wine and gold, man, and just get the band back together. And lastly, let's get JR done. It's that time. Uninterrupted. Let's go. The Land.
The Land, First Take on a Friday, a feel-good Friday, and it all starts with King James, Max Kellerman, Molly Karam here in Bristol, Stephen A. in his hometown of New York. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. How y'all doing?
What's going on, Molly?
How we doing?
We're all alone.
Yes, loners. Stephen A., you ready to...
Max, I'm always ready. Max, this is, I'm going to be in the studio with you most of the time.
Yeah.
But sometimes, on occasion, you're going to have to hold it down the way you got to hold it down today, being in there with Molly. Without me, I'm sure you can handle it.
I don't know what I'm going to do.
Oh, he can hold it down. He's good. He's all good. Let's get into it. You know where we're starting. We tip things off in the Land with another decision by LeBron. The King will now wear the crown of the highest paid player in the NBA for the first time in his career. LeBron James inked a 3-year, $100 million deal with the Cavaliers, according to his agent, Rich Paul. In his first contract year, he'll make a cool $31 million. Source told ESPN that there's a player option for a 3rd year. So his salary for the 2017-2018 season will top $33 million, making him the highest paid player in a single season in league history, topping the $33 million Michael Jordan earned with the Bulls in the 97-98 season. Stephen A., is this good for the league?
Well, it is good for the league from this perspective. The best player in the world is the highest paid player. So in that regard, this is a very, very good thing. LeBron James is deserving of this and far more, as far as I'm concerned. If he got $60 million a year, it would not have been a problem with me, simply because not just his greatness, not just the fact that he's the greatest in the world, not just the fact that he is a champion, but also because of the fact that he's box office. You walk through the turnstiles and clamor to an arena to see LeBron James. ESPN, TNT, and any network that airs NBA games desperately want LeBron James on the basketball court when their cameras are rolling. And so in that regard, it's clearly very, very good for the league. Him, his agent Rich Paul, did an outstanding job. It wasn't that hard, by the way, because it shouldn't be that hard, because LeBron James should be able to get what he wants. But here's the important point, Max, that I think has to be articulated. The best player in the world is getting paid the highest amount of money. So that is very, very good when it comes to LeBron James. But when you think about a James Harden, when you think about a Russell Westbrook and others, as great as they are as players, it's a Mike Conley Jr., who just signed a $153 million contract. It was also very, very pivotal that this deal accentuated LeBron James, or validated LeBron James' greatness, monetarily. Because had it not, then we would have had a problem. This is the kind of stuff that needs to happen here. When you think about Mike Conley Jr., who I respect, when you think about James Harden, who I recognize to be a scoring sensation, when you think about a Russell Westbrook, who I consider to be a superstar talent, none of them have rings. None of them. And so when you have that situation, but you have individuals who are achieving less, getting paid more, that's the problem. And that's something that has to be fixed. So the fact that Rich Paul and LeBron James ensured that LeBron James is getting paid more than anybody, okay, particularly over the next couple of years, I think it was very, very pivotal that that message is sent. Those who are the greatest, those who generate revenue better than anybody else, are the individuals who should get paid. LeBron James happens to be somebody who does both. Not only is he the one that generates revenue in terms of attracting eyeballs and beyond, just as good, if not better than anybody in the game, but he stands here today as the reigning defending NBA champion. And because of that, it's pivotal that you showcase that by making sure he is the individual that is paid the most. That is why this is so big. That is why this is so important, because hopefully, it's sending the message that, you know what? You can't just be box office. You need to win too. You need to be great too in order to get those kind of dollars. When we look at some of these individuals, Bradley Beal, DeMar DeRozan, these guys can play. They're very, very good. But 128 to 139 million respectively? Come on now. It's great that LeBron James got this, because it needed to happen.
This is bad for the league, Stephen A., because the fact is LeBron James just had basically like $900 million stolen from him. People are going to focus on the $100 million he just got. What about the $900 million extra that he's worth that he's not going to get paid? And how does this affect things? In other words, when you have a league with a cap and a max contract, all that ever is, kids, don't buy that this is about competitive balance. It's nonsense. It's about funneling money from the players to the owners. And how does this affect things negatively? Let's take LeBron James, and you mentioned a name I want to focus on for a second, Stephen A. Mike Conley. Mike Conley is an excellent point guard. When you think about constructing a championship team, he's like one of the guys you're like, boy, if he's your point guard, you're on your way. He plays it just the way you want a point guard to play the position, you know, minus the kind of obvious talent of a Westbrook or something like that. But the fact that Mike Conley makes in the neighborhood per year of what LeBron James makes means that the system is broken. It's not like any talent evaluator or GM. Stephen A., you bring up the point about the revenue he generates. So there's two things. There's the on-the-floor value, on-the-court value, and there's the off-the-court money value. No evaluator in either realm would ever think Mike Conley is nearly as valuable as LeBron James, yet he's going to be paid that way. And so what you have is a warping of the dollar in the NBA to the talent on the floor. And this is why you get these kind of weird rosters and cap problems, etc., because they're not letting the marketplace dictate what guys are getting paid. They're letting some arbitrary system dictate what they're being paid.
Will you stop lying to the American public? You are a proud capitalist. You are all about what the market bears.
Sure.
And if the market allows you to be able to get some dollars, you've got no problem getting it. Mike Conley was in a position to hold the Memphis Grizzlies hostage. Anthony Davis was in a position to hold the New Orleans Hornets hostage if it came to that. James Harden was definitely in a prime position to get $118 million. Everybody knows that. And Russell Westbrook, in the aftermath of Kevin Durant departing from OKC, clearly was in a position to re-up the way that he did. You know it, I know it. And then when you look at LeBron James, clearly he's worth more than anybody else. Clearly he's worth about $1 billion to the local Cleveland economy. Nobody is saying that the local Cleveland economy can't pay him, but the Cavaliers, even though we can argue about a salary cap and what have you and how restrictive that is, there is no doubt about that. But if LeBron James deserved his money, well, what the hell did Michael Jordan deserve
listen,
when he was playing? So we know that.
This is what I will say. Somehow, in spite of this system which suppresses the player's salary and warps the economy of basketball and has guys like Conley, and I'm not arguing, Conley should get every dime that's coming to him. In fact, Conley is probably also underpaid since he got a max deal. He likely would have gotten more had the max deal been bigger. So I'm not arguing that Conley's overpaid. I'm saying LeBron is way underpaid. Way underpaid.
Well, you're talking about salary. I'm saying that when when you say he's worth $1 billion, he's worth $1 billion to the local economy. So
okay.
who knows what money he's getting outside of the Cavaliers to supplement the salary that he's getting?
He would get that money anyway. And if you just
I'm saying he deserves it.
Of course, but if you took the max contract off, even if you kept the cap, LeBron James would make multiples of what he's making now. Multiples of what he's making now.
So let me ask you this question. So basically what you're saying is this, because in theory, I get where you're coming from, and nobody can disagree with that. We all know that even at $31 million, LeBron James is underpaid. There's no denying that. But the way you sound, give LeBron James $100 million and give everybody else $2.
No.
That ain't going to work. Not if you're trying to assemble a team. That ain't going to work.
I'm not saying underpay the other guys. There are also many of them being underpaid.
So you don't agree with a cap?
Although
you don't agree with a cap?
Of course not. A cap is nonsense. Max contracts are nonsense. It's nonsense. Some kind of revenue sharing in the form of a luxury tax, and LeBron would start getting paid at least nearly what he's worth. But I will say this. Michael Jordan is the record he just broke, and Jordan he made that money almost 20 years ago. So in spite of what I'm saying, the NBA does figure out a way to usually make the biggest star the highest paid guy. That part they got right, for sure. But not maybe in Mike Conley's case, but there are examples of guys who are getting max contracts who don't deserve it simply because of this system that's now in place. It's like, well, you got to spend your money. He's the best guy you got. If you don't give it to him, someone else will give it to him. And it creates cap problems throughout the league, and it's nonsense.
Last point that I'm going to make is this real quickly before we move on. I am opposed to a cap overall. I understand its existence in terms of course certainty, but I'm opposed to it. But I will tell you this. While I'm opposed to the cap, I am not opposed to guys getting max 2-year deals. Max 2-3 years max. Now, I don't care how much money you get in that span, but I don't think any of these guys should get lengthy 5-6 year contracts.
We're on the same page, and I wonder if the labor union would ever agree to that. Get rid of the cap, get rid of the max contract, get rid of all that, but shorten the length of the deals. Let the marketplace do its thing.
They won't. Trust me. Let's move on. They won't. Trust me.
All right. Congrats to LeBron on his much-deserved new deal. But we had preseason football last night. One, Cam Newton. Some call him Tier 1. Some say Tier 2. Only played a series last night, but the reigning league MVP still made his presence felt. Newton completed 5 of 6 passes for 36 yards in the opening drive in the preseason opener at Baltimore. That cost linebacker A.J. Klein a touchdown later in the first quarter. The Panthers were penalized 5 yards when Newton ran onto the field celebrating.
Just got too excited. I was hoping they would give a warning, but it's no big deal. I don't want to, have a discussion about, something that I've learned from. I'm here to just specifically talk about the football game. Aside of the penalties, you live and you learn is one of the main focal points that they have. But as far as, dwelling on it, it happened. We all learned something as a team, and we're just moving forward.
All right, so just to be clear, the Panthers were penalized after 5 yards there. He ran onto the field following an interception, negating linebacker A.J. Klein's 94-yard return for a touchdown. Stephen A., is it time to just leave Cam alone?
It is. It is. Look, we're talking about a preseason game, number one. And the reason why we bring up the subject on the show this morning is because the answer that Cam gave, a lot of people couldn't hear the question. But if you watched last night, it was people using that as an excuse to allude to some of the transgressions from his past, primarily, behavior. Not that they got into the specifics, but we could all surmise that there you're alluding to him storming off the podium after losing the Super Bowl to the Denver Broncos last year. Max still brings up how you got to jump on that football, and go and get it, et cetera, et cetera. What Cam is basically saying is this. Look, I'm here to talk about the present and the future. I can't change it. Make no mistake about it. I've learned from it. We'll move forward. And I think he deserves that. When he stormed off the podium in the aftermath of the Super Bowl, I got on him about that, as did everybody. But the reason I got on Cam Newton about it was because I have so much respect for him. and what he has accomplished and how great he is, I knew that when he stormed off that podium because he lost, that's what everybody was going to be talking about, as opposed to the greatness that he had put on display for the vast majority of the 2015 season. And you just don't want that when you have gone through what he has gone through, from his days in Florida to his days in Auburn to coming into the NFL and wearing a towel over his head, and the psychology of Cam Newton constantly being dissected and analyzed ad nauseum. He has evolved and elevated himself to such an extraordinary level that I want that to be celebrated, because not only do I think he's a great player, I think he's a really, really good brother. And he is an incredible role model for a lot of kids out there. I remember when Scott Van Pelt had him on SportsCenter last year, and he had the kids with him for Thanksgiving. You know, even before, right after he had beaten the Dallas Cowboys, it was one or the other. All of these kind of things that take place, it matters because he has that kind of profound impact. And I didn't want him to put himself in a situation where people were lamenting those inactions that they necessarily weren't flattered about. Now, that doesn't mean that you could be so controlled and you got to walk around worried about every little thing that you do and it being judged and dissected and picked apart. I get that. He shouldn't have to worry about that. He should just go ahead and live his life. But I also think it's incumbent upon us to exercise an extreme level of fairness. To this day, and I mean no disrespect, I have more of an issue with his daddy than I did with him, because Cam Newton went out there and performed. He had a ball doing what he did and everything. And we brought his father on to talk about Cam Newton, and his father was talking about him. So to me, you know, that was more of an issue than anything else. Cam Newton is phenomenal. And I think his father has done an outstanding job with him and deserves a lot of credit, even though he's quick to tell you he does. But Cam Newton is great. He's exceptional. And I think that he's moving in a forward direction. And I think we should support him along those ways in terms of forgetting about all the other stuff from the past and focusing on the present and future. I think he's earned that. I think he deserves that.
I want to start by saying that I think it's pretty obvious. I'm a huge Cam Newton fan. We were arguing the other day, and I was saying not only is he tier 1 quarterback, for some reason he was in tier 2. Not only is he tier 1,
a tier 2 quarterback.
But he's tier 1.
He's tier 2.
But not only that, he might be number 1 overall. He could take that from Aaron Rodgers this year. I said Aaron Rodgers, Molly.
When he does it, I'll tell you.
Now,
when he does it, I'll tell you.
I'm a huge fan, and I want to be very clear about this. Cam Newton is unequivocally a sports hero. Not a sports villain, a sports hero. If you don't perceive him that way, I feel sorry for you. I don't know what you're watching. He's scoring touchdowns and handing the balls to kids. I mean, like, what does he got to do? And smiling and having a good time and carrying his team. Yes, he should have jumped on that ball in the Super Bowl, but okay, that's one play. I don't even care that much that he storms out of press conferences after, away from the microphone after the Super Bowl, and he's being a sore loser. Good for him for being a sore loser. He's competitive. But I will say this, and last night was not a big deal. You rushed onto the field. It cost your team. They're enforcing this now. They're making it a point of emphasis. And so here's a good way to make an example to everyone. See, Cam Newton cost his team. Make it a big deal so it gets through everyone's head. It's just preseason. No big deal. But it is a little deal. It's not a big deal. It's a little deal. And when Cam gets up at a post-game presser and says, I'm only going to talk about the present and the future. I'm not going to talk about the past. On the one hand, you accept that as, here's a guy who's focused on the task at hand. It's what we want from our athletes, right? Focus on today. Forget about, like a great relief pitcher. You gave up a home run, forget about it. What's next? So I understand that. But in a way, that could also be used, at least it gives the appearance of not taking responsibility. Look, any behavior that's in the past is already in the past. Why do I even really have to deal with that publicly? I'm just going to go forward. And in that sense, because I believe Cam Newton is poised for this to be his world. I mean, I thought it was going into the Super Bowl. I said it in Sports Nation at the time, Stephen A., like, this is Cam's world. We're just living in it. He's going to be Super Bowl MVP. I was a tad premature there. But I really think this is the Cam Newton and eventually Andrew Luck era. So with that comes the responsibility of owning it at the podium. Is it a huge deal? No, but it is a deal. He should be doing this.
No. But nobody's saying that he shouldn't own it. Nobody's saying that he doesn't have to, Max. What we're saying is he did what he did. He recognizes he was wrong. He didn't sit up there last night and say that he wasn't wrong. He said, I'm not here to talk about that. I made a mistake. You learn from it. You move forward. What I'm saying is he has earned the right for us to sit back and say, okay, he says he owns it. Let's move forward and judge him accordingly, as opposed to looking for every little thing to dissect and find wrong about this dude. This brother is elite on so many levels.
Not according to Stephen A. Smith, tier 2.
Well, listen, I still think tier 2 is elite to some degree. When I have him as tier 2, because I consider Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady in a different class. It's not because he's not a tier 1 talent. It's not because
Drew
he
Brees
can't
and Ben Roethlisberger. You've had them all tier 1.
Right.
Yeah, Cam tier 2.
Time out. I'm sorry. All Super Bowl champions. That is my right. Back up, Max Kellerman.
You might have backed me up on that one.
Jump
on the ball, Cam. Jump on the ball.
The fact is, excuse me, I have every right, and there is no shame in my game to look at individuals who have done it over the years, plus each have at least one Super Bowl ring. Cam Newton did what he did last year for 1 year and still came up a Super Bowl title short.
And do you know what we like about everyone we just mentioned?
And say he's great and say he's still tier 2 for now. Back up and get over it, because I'm not changing my mind until he shows me more.
Well, then he's going to change it for you by what? The middle of this year? The end of this year? How long does it take for it to change?
It could be.
You mentioned, we talked about Tom
and
Brady. We talked about, just now you mentioned Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger's names came up as tier 1 quarterbacks. Do you know what we like when they do? If something goes wrong, when they get up to the podium and say, that's in the past, I don't want to discuss it, we tend not to like it. And when they discuss it and say, look, here's what happened, I own it, can we now move on? We tend to like it. In other words, when you don't give us that moment of looking at it, acknowledging it, and discussing it, then it's a little harder for us to move on.
He did have his locker stalled days after the Super Bowl when he was confronted about it again. He absolutely did that. I got on him. Everybody got on him. But he absolutely confronted it days afterwards. But you don't use a preseason game to bring it up, because he got penalized because he was excited that one of his teammates got a pick 6 and he didn't recognize the new rule that was in play or whatever.
As I said,
that's not a reason to bring it up.
Not a big deal, a little deal. It's a little deal, but it's a deal.
The arm-in-arm decal the Cowboys unveiled to open training camp won't be on their helmets when the club opens its preseason schedule Saturday at the Los Angeles Rams. Dallas heard back from the NFL on Wednesday and were told by legal officials they cannot wear the decal during any preseason or regular season games. That, according to Cowboys executive VP Stephen Jones. However, the Cowboys can wear the decal during training camp practices. Jones said everyone has to be uniform with the league and the other 31 teams. We respect their decision. Stephen A., is the NFL wrong?
No, they're not. NFL's not wrong at all. And I'm not joking about the Cowboys. I'm not sitting here talking about they're the worst fan base in American history and all of that stuff. That's all in fun because I'm a native New Yorker and I grew up hating the Cowboys. There's nothing malicious there. I'm just having fun. This is serious. I understand that the NFL has a uniform policy. There's certain things that they do, and they do it the way that they do it, and that's it. From the socks that you wear to the shoes that you wear to the colors that you wear. D'Angelo Williams, who was a guest on our show when we were in Pittsburgh, somebody that I've communicated with several times over the last year. So really good brother. Obviously had breast cancer issues to fend off with his mom, and in honor of her, this pink in his hair, the pink shoes and things of that nature. And the NFL had a big time problem with it because they have Breast Cancer Awareness Month, if I remember correctly, but it's not something that you could do all year round for every game, et cetera, and that's something that they insisted upon doing the way that they do. I understand their reasons and their rationale behind this, Max. That's not my issue. My issue is that the Dallas Cowboys can't be trusted when you come to the decal issue. And that may be a very unpopular decision. I certainly saw that people in Dallas, with the radio stations and beyond, had things to say about me after I alluded to that a few days ago. Let me be the first to say on national television, I don't give a damn. I could care less. Here's the reality of the situation, and it's not a laughing matter. The Dallas Cowboys haven't shown that they can be trusted to obey the law. I'm certainly not accusing them of trying to use this for media publicity or anything like that. I am in no way accusing the Dallas Cowboys of that. A matter of fact, I will go out of my way to say that I believe truly that their heart is in the right place because they're human beings just like the rest of us. And I applaud their efforts to try and do that because all of us should be sensitive to that. Just like Black Lives Matter wanted to bring attention to police brutality and violence on the part of some police officers against unarmed black citizens. The reality is that police officers out here are in danger as well. And when 5 police officers get gunned down, that's something that should touch all of our lives. That's why you had Dwayne Wade with LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, and CP3 bring attention to that at the ESPYs, opening the ESPYs. We get all of that. The problem is that after you wear this decal and you bring attention and you lock arm in arm, then you go to the Dallas Cowboys history and the likelihood of something happening again, because something always seems to happen with the Dallas Cowboys. And far more often than we would like, or for our taste, it involves some semblance of lawlessness. Doesn't involve killings, doesn't involve murders, doesn't involve anything that egregious, but nevertheless, it involves stuff that they shouldn't be in the news for. And so to me, with the NFL, you don't want a team like the Dallas Cowboys wearing that decal on their helmet and then turning around and then 2 days later, 3 days later, a week later, they're in the news for some level of lawlessness on the part of one of the idiots that they have playing for them. By and large, most of the guys inside their locker room know how to act. Jason Witten is class act. Tony Romo is a class act. I love me some Des Bryant despite some of his troubles from the past. I'm quite sure a vast majority of guys in their locker room know how to act and would act accordingly. But because of the culture that Jerry Jones has allowed to sift through his franchise like a virus, you can't trust them to eradicate or remove themselves from some level of lawlessness. So if I'm the NFL, that's the last franchise in the league that I would want wearing a decal honoring anybody when it comes to lawfulness, because I can't trust that the Dallas Cowboys are going to act accordingly. That's just my thought.
I'm glad you said there was no moral equivalency between some of the transgressions on the Cowboys that may take place in the future and the kind of crime that was committed when that maniac gunned down those police in cold blood.
No moral equivalency whatsoever. We never accused them of that.
Of course. And I understand even the illusion, even though, again, you say that's not the case here, but to the idea that maybe the Cowboys are somehow being cynical in terms of their asking for permission to put the decal showing solidarity with the Dallas PD because they know the NFL is going to turn them down. And the NFL is going to turn them down correctly, unfortunately, because that's a slippery slope. It becomes like Black Lives Matter wants to do something. Well, wait a minute. You did it for the Dallas PD. What about this innocent person that was killed? Some other group wants to make some kind of a statement a player or a team feels strongly about. But I understand also the natural human reaction to hearing, wait a minute, this demented person in cold blood murders 5 Dallas PD who were there, law enforcement officers who were there ensuring the rights of protesters to essentially protest against the behavior of police, maybe not the Dallas PD particularly, but police generally, and they're there protecting and serving. And even when the bad stuff started happening that day, the police helped make sure it wasn't much worse. I understand the people of Earth looking at that and going, hold on, you can't honor them. You have a problem with a team honoring them. Same way with breast cancer awareness. Cancer is the enemy of humanity. I mean, there's no bigger enemy of humanity since the dawn of time than cancer. So I understand, again, where the people of Earth would look and say, wait a minute. The NFL has such an issue with the idea of their brand identity in some way that you can't even show support for people fighting cancer? And yet, because it is a slippery slope, because partly sports, especially when the games begin, is meant to distract, is an escape for people, they don't want to politicize it. And while what happened in Dallas and breast cancer, and there are other issues too that don't seem political, there will be others who come and say, well, wait a minute, our cause isn't really political either, and certainly has the moral equivalence of the causes you've already supported. And the NFL just can't get into that business. I get why they did it, but I also understand, Stephen A., the human reaction to this, which is, if we can't just get together as people and use some common sense and say, this was a heinous crime, good for the Cowboys supporting it, and why would the NFL stop that? I get that reaction. I understand it entirely. It was my gut reaction, too, before I thought it through.
Well, it's not, but yeah, but at the same time, you know, people that have those feelings, they could have it. But again, you have to look at the big picture, because I'm not necessarily opposing those points that you made, but I'm talking about the Cowboys. Just a few days ago, if you recall, whether it was yesterday or the day before, I don't recall, we were talking about Art Browse, the former coach at Baylor, who was at Dallas Cowboys camp. Now, he went to various places, including Cleveland, because RG3 used to play for him as well. And I went on the record saying that when I met Art Browse, he seemed to be a very, very nice guy, and he's not the one who committed sexual assault, was arrested or accused of sexual assault, or in one case with another one of his players was sentenced to 20 years in prison for sexually assaulting two different women. That wasn't Art Browse. Those were his players. But the fact of the matter is, he was walking around fully anticipating that he was worthy of another job in the immediate future, because there were things that he couldn't say, there's things that he couldn't tell, and the bottom line is he was trying to come across as a victim. All right, that's fine. The problem is Jerry Jones stuck his nose into the equation and was speaking very, very glowingly about him and how much he loved the man, what he thought about the man, how he'd have no problem if his son was a football player and played for the man, blah, 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 blah. Now, this is in the immediate aftermath of you bringing Greg Hardy on your team last year, watching the distraction that he was, finally coming to your senses and letting him go. But then in the immediate aftermath of that, you are the one front and center speaking up for Art Browse with no sensitivity whatsoever. And those are the kind of things that I'm talking about. Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, they got to watch it. I
want to deal with that point for a second. If your argument is because the Cowboys have a culture, or Jerry Jones in particular abides or somehow enables some kind of criminal behavior on his team, whether it's systemic or, system in the Cowboys system, or it's just, a feeling that guys on the margins who don't behave can find a home with the Cowboys, that's a legitimate point. But I don't think that disqualifies the Cowboys from also trying to do good work and trying to support the right causes, including law enforcement causes.
Wait a minute, but I'm not saying it disqualifies them in terms of their own psyche, their own emotion, their own level of sensitivity in asking. I'm saying that the NFL has every right to disqualify them. I'm saying that even though the NFL probably did it to maintain control and have a uniform policy that's followed by all, it would not have bothered me one bit if the NFL said, we get where you're coming from. We appreciate it, but we don't trust you to carry the baton and conduct yourself in an upstanding fashion, where when we look at that decal and we think about what transpired and we think about lawlessness, you're the paragon of virtue to bring an enlightened and sensitive perspective to that equation.
The NFL,
the Dallas Cowboys cannot be trusted to do that because of who they are.
From the NFL's point of view, yes. From Dallas PD, I think Dallas PD would I assume they would welcome the support.
I'm sure they would.
Right. But the NFL, I get the point.
But I think just like we did with Cam and putting past transgressions aside, say we do that for the Cowboys and we think they're authentic and they're being genuine, you appreciate the fact that they want to honor the police officers in their community that lost their lives, of course. But I think we all agree there is a uniform policy, Stephen A., and it can't turn into like a boxer shorts with all these different sponsors. There's so many causes that touch all of us. So I think we appreciate the intention, but it can't happen. And the NFL was in the right there. We all agree on that one.
Hi, this is Reese Waters from Off Center. This episode, I defend Russia. We talk about getting dumped, and we set new street fight rules. Plus, ESPN NFL's Jeff Dickerson and I discuss what movie drove us to drink in the theater. Download in the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
amused? No, not at all. I think what these guys do in our Dominican Academy and Delmarva and Aberdeen and Gulf Coast League and Frederick and Bowie and Delmarva I've already mentioned and Norfolk. I take very seriously the stuff they have to do to get the opportunities and do what they're doing. And somebody will sell some tickets in the spring. I should be careful. We may sign him. But I bet he was a good player in high school. I was too. I played quarterback.
Stop. Shots fired. I bet he was a good player in high school. I was too. That was Orioles manager Buck Showalter, clearly not so hot on Tim Tebow in Major League Baseball. Max, is Buck wrong?
Buck Showalter has, you just watched that. He's charismatic. He's a great person. You love him. You watch him, you go, boy, and he's old school and he's right about it, right? And Buck, thank you for what you did for my beloved Yankees. He got him right there. Joe Torre came in and put him over the top, but Buck got him right there. I'm forever grateful. So, Stephen A., this isn't easy to say, but I think I have to do it. Buck, get off your high horse.
Oh.
He's got to get off his high horse here, Stephen A. Look, Buck Showalter stands on principle. I get it. And principle, which is the way he runs an organization, works for him. That's the way he runs a ball club. Before Buck Showalter, signs off on, I think we should draft this guy or sign this guy, he asks everybody about him. The parking lot attendant, how does he treat you? How does this guy act? He wants to know really about character. So he's all about principle, and you have to respect that. And clearly it works. It also, in addition to being the right thing to do, it gets results. So what Buck doesn't like here is someone's kind of circumventing the system. All these young kids are putting in all this hard work, and somehow Tebow comes in with his celebrity and he gets to take a shortcut, and that does not sit well with Buck. I get that. But practically speaking, what are we really talking about here? Let's say Tebow goes to low A ball. And he's going to take one person's spot on the roster. He's going to take the 25th best player in low A ball spot on the roster in the history of the universe. The 25th best player in low A ball has never made the major leagues. Unless he was so young that he really shouldn't have even been there because he was so young and that's how talented he was, or he started juicing. Barring one of those two circumstances, that guy has never ever made the major leagues. He's not taking might be doing the kid a favor actually, because that kid ain't getting far. Let's say he goes to Double A where the prospects or High A ball, some league where there are live arms and stuff and prospects to really see what he's got. He's not going to last there. What is he going to delay someone's development by 2 or 3 months before we all figure out he can't play baseball? What harm is there really? On principle, I get it, but the practical, the pragmatic approach says, how much harm is there really? And if he succeeds at that level, well, then you really just were standing on principle. He belonged there. Either way, I understand why Buck's upset here, but sports is not just competition, Stephen A. It's also entertainment. And if Tebow uses his celebrity to get himself some extra opportunities and employers are willing to employ him and give him that look, if he can't perform, he'll be out of there. If he can, he actually deserved it in the first place. Buck, get off your high horse. I'm sorry. Oh, I don't like saying that, but he has to get off his high horse.
Well, first of all, I would deeply appreciate it if you wouldn't feel the need to apologize.
Nah,
if you think he needs to get off his high horse. So what? It doesn't matter. It is what it is. But let me say this. Max Kellerman, I'm sorry I have to go here, but maybe it's a black thing and you wouldn't understand, and Showalter does better than you. I don't understand how that's possible, but it might be the case here. Allow me to sit up here and break this down for you. I appreciate, and I 1,000% agree with Buck Showalter's point, his cynicism, and beyond. And while I'm speaking about Buck Showalter, I want to give my man Adam Jones, who tweeted the other day, pretty much the same thing about how he was going to go and play in the NFL once the offseason for Major League Baseball arrives, because after all, he used to play a little football in high school himself. You see the cynicism and the skepticism being thrown in the direction of Tim Tebow and all of us who would support him, including people like you, certainly not me. And here's why, Max Kellerman, because if you're Buck Showalter, what you're alluding to is the fact that here is a young man who hasn't played baseball since high school. There is something called protocol. There is something called a process that Tim Tebow methodically goes about the business of circumventing. I'm not hating on him. I'm not knocking him. It doesn't make him a criminal. It doesn't make him a bad person in any way. Tim Tebow is a very good man and a very nice man who does a great job for us here at ESPN. Only thing I've ever said about him is that he can't throw a football. I never thought to question his baseball skills because I never knew anything about them. I understand the great Gary Sheffield, who smacked 509 home runs in his career, spoke up for Tim Tebow. I get all of that. But the point that you are missing, that I think Gary Sheffield was missing, dare I say, that Buck Showalter is on the money about, is alluding to the work that so many people put in just to strive to get noticed. And all Tim Tebow has to do is get a publicist to leak the information, and everyone will clamor to watch him and to see what he's worth. Why? For one reason and one reason only: because he's liked. And how many people have that luxury, particularly in the United States of America? There are a plethora of individuals, they can't be numbered, that are out there pounding the pavement, grinding, starving for one opportunity to be recognized. Nobody gives a damn about them. But Tim Tebow, because he's loved, because we appreciate how he invokes God and Jesus Christ with practically everything that he says, and how he's the walking embodiment of decency, because that's who we like as a person. We're going to sit there and elevate his stature and his cachet in a public forum where he gets to get recognized for things he doesn't deserve to be recognized for.
So let me get this straight.
He has done nothing on the baseball level that warrants anybody even going to look at him take a swing. He has done nothing on the baseball level. We had footage of him on television the other day taking a swing taking swings, all right, in batting practice. He has done nothing
so let me get this straight.
that warrants national attention for that. But he's getting it, isn't he? Because he's Tim Tebow.
So let me get this straight. If you have the ability to get an opportunity that others do not, you should not exercise that ability?
That is not, no, I did not say that,
so,
Max.
But if that's the case, then you should get on the teams that are looking at him, not him.
Hold it. I specifically said, if you were listening to me, I did not blame Tim Tebow in any way. If I were him, I would have done the same thing.
So you're mad at the teams?
It's not his fault. The teams and the media. He has done nothing to deserve this opportunity. If that's the case, I got a whole bunch of brothers in Hollis, Queens who play stickball at 190 PS 192 Park in Hollis. They can swing a bat, Max.
By the way, Michael Jordan got a minor league contract.
And he didn't deserve it.
Right.
He didn't deserve it,
yeah,
Max.
but it's Michael Jordan. But it's Michael Jordan, and of course he achieved on a much higher level than Tebow.
But he didn't deserve it. The point is,
so you mean to tell me that if someone takes the last spot on the roster of a low minor league, that means they're taking the opportunity, quote unquote, of someone who's never going to make the majors anyway, because the media is interested and the fans are interested and it generates business.
We understand.
Even though he's going to fail and it will be short-lived anyway, that's a problem.
You're being narrow-minded. The fact of the matter is that we understand why. He's a name. It's name recognition.
Sure.
It attracts eyeballs. Eyeballs attract ratings. Ratings generate revenue. We get it. But what Buck Showalter was alluding to is from a principled perspective. There are millions of people who are out there who are better and who are more worthy and will never get recognized just because they ain't popular.
What you're talking about...
Hold on. In the case of Tim Tebow, here's what makes it worse than Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player we've ever seen. He was a 3-time champion when he retired. And so as a result, we wanted to see what he had. He didn't deserve the opportunity in baseball himself, but it makes sense because he was a winner somewhere. In the case of Tim Tebow, he went to the NFL. He completed 46% of his passes. Because he won 7-4 and won a playoff game, we had to treat him like a tad bit shy of Peyton Manning. John Elway came on the record and said it took Peyton Manning to replace Tim Tebow because Tim Tebow was that popular.
What you're objecting to, what you are objecting to, you want to hear what I have to say about that? What you're objecting to is the lack of equality of opportunity. And equality of opportunity is something that is a very popular political position, both sides of the aisle, all sides of all aisles. Everyone says equality of opportunity, but we know we live in a world where that is an ideal that is likely, that certainly hasn't been achieved, and while it's commendable, according to most, that we strive for it, is unlikely to ever be perfectly achieved. And so there will always be instances, there will always be instances where someone has a certain degree of celebrity or connections or relationships or whatever the case may be that affords them some opportunity that others won't get.
That doesn't mean you be silent about it. Buck Showalter wasn't silent about it, and I'm acknowledging that he's right. That's all.
He doesn't have to love it, but the reality of the situation is Tebow is highly unlikely to take anyone's job who had a real shot at making the major leagues in the first place. If he fails, he fails, and everyone's proven right. If he somehow, against all odds, succeeds, then it turns out that this outrage is actually misplaced.
That doesn't make Buck Showalter wrong.
If he succeeds, yes, it does, actually.
Guys,
he is right.
Carmelo Anthony says he can certainly tune out the naysayers who take issue with his NBA resume. Anthony telling Mark Stein that becoming the first U.S. male to win 3 gold medals more than eases the sting of not winning an NBA championship. Most athletes don't have an opportunity to say they won a gold medal. Better yet, 3 gold medals. I would be very happy walking away from the game knowing that I've given the game everything I have, knowing I played on a high level at every level, high school, college, won a championship in college, of course, at Syracuse, and possibly 3 gold medals. I can look back on it when my career is over if I don't have an NBA championship ring and say I had a great career. Stephen A., here's the question. Does Carmelo actually believe what he's saying?
No, he doesn't. But it doesn't matter. I must admit this is one of, maybe not the hardest, but this is one of the hardest topics that I've ever had to embrace here on First Take, in my career doing First Take, which is now entering its 4th year. I love me some Carmelo Anthony. I've known him for many, many years. I know a lot of things about him professionally, a lot of things personally. He's a good brother, and I got a lot of love for him. And I'm biased in favor of him a lot of times because of the things that I know. I've never been more disappointed in words that come out of his mouth than what I heard yesterday. First of all, Carmelo Anthony probably has no clue how he came across saying what he said. He doesn't realize that he just gave Knicks fans a reason to return their season tickets or to give back or to ask for their money back. Anybody who brought a season package, a 10-game package, or anything like that, he doesn't realize what he just did. You are a star in this league. You are in the midst of a $122 million contract. Okay? Part of the reason, one of the main reasons New York Knicks fans support this team is because you are here. And you can make such an egregious statement like this. It is unbelievable. Now, there's no one with sense that's going to disagree with me about how unwise it was for Melo to say that. But they may disagree with me as to how impactful this is. You essentially gave critics a reason to believe winning's not a priority for you. That you're satisfied with gold medals when you beat up on China or Brazil, or you escape against Australia with Patty Mills and Andrew Bogut leading the way. That's enough for you. That's enough for you. but you drafted in the same draft class as LeBron James. LeBron James went #1 overall. Aside from Darko Milicic at #2, it was Carmelo who went at #3 overall. How in God's name could you sit up there in the same class as Bosh, as the same class as D. Wade? How in God's name could you sit up there? Your 13th year in the league, having played in only one conference finals, having never played in an NBA finals, having one of your best friends that's been to 7 NBA finals, having won 3. One of your best friends having played in 5 NBA finals, having won 3. You never even had an appearance. And you're saying it's cool? It's all right? I can still look back on my career and think I had a great career. In what damn world could you possibly say such a thing? Whether it's barbershops, barbecues, cats hanging out, chilling, talking basketball. Melo, who is from the streets of Baltimore and from the streets of New York, who knows how the street rolls, is looking at him and saying, what the hell did you just say? Did you just say that? For national publications? To be aired nationally? What the hell is that? I cannot believe that. I cannot believe that he would say something like that. I know Melo. I know how much he wants this, how hard he works, what a big-time baller he truly is. And I know that brother got the heart of a lion. But this quote eradicates all of that. It's me standing alone, and LeBron and those who know Melo standing alone by ourselves, having to vouch for him, because anyone who does not know him would not believe in him after reading a quote like this. I cannot believe he allowed himself to give this kind of quote. It's insane, and it's very disappointing. I cannot believe he said this.
Well, I can't argue with that point. Because it's you just read that quote, you go, damn Melo, damn Carmelo, you know. But the question for me is, does he believe it? Now, Stephen A., you said you think he doesn't believe it, and you have relationships with various players, including Carmelo Anthony. So when you say that, that's based on more information than, for example, I have about it, more intimate information. However, know a little something about psychology. Listen, rationalization, when guys rationalize, that is a powerful kind of self-deluding mechanism. Carmelo Anthony, I think, does believe this, Stephen A. How can he live with his career if he doesn't? So he tells himself, if I get 3, I won a college championship, if I get 3 gold medals, oh, well, the NBA fight, I just didn't have good enough teammates, and that's good enough. I think he does believe it, but I have something else that I want to disabuse people, I think especially you of, Stephen A. And after going at Buck Showalter a little bit earlier, now I got to go, I got all the New York sports icons. Carmelo Anthony is not nearly as big a deal as you think he is, Stephen A. He's a great scoring player. I think his resume it's fair to question whether he is, on what level of greatness he actually operates on as a player. I think players tend to overrate Carmelo because other players understand what he does is incredibly difficult. To master every facet, and you went through it very articulately the other day, to master every facet, not of offense, but of scoring, to the extent that he has, it's difficult to master any one of those facets. He's mastered all of them. So other players look at him and marvel because they know he does extremely difficult things better than just about anyone ever. And they mistake that for thinking because they're difficult to do and he's mastered them and there are a lot of things that he can do, that means he's a great NBA player or an NBA player on the uppermost level, a top 5 type player, when right now he's not even really a top 10 type player. He plays in an enormous media market. He came in the league with enormous fanfare. And as I said, he's one of the all-time great scorers. I wouldn't say offensive players, I'd say scorers. But he's not LeBron James, never has been. And in fact, if you look at their two careers, he's also not Dwayne Wade.
Well,
and you can even argue he's not Chris Bosh, ultimately. I mean, he's better than Milicic, that's for sure.
You're wrong there. Hey, he's Chris Bosh, I can tell you that. But let me say this to you. Here's where the bigger issue comes into play, Max, where we're answering the direct question, do we really think he believes this? This quote from Carmelo Anthony is something you say when you're retired and you're looking back on your career and you haven't done it. Then you can sit up there and you have no problem with the quote.
Yep.
Because why shouldn't he think positive about himself and find the silver lining in it all? The problem is he's 32. Likelihood is that he has a legit 4 or 5 years left in him if his knees hold up, because he can average 20 to 25 in his sleep. They just acquired Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah and Courtney Lee. And you have Kristaps Porzingis. And Phil Jackson is the president of basketball operations. And you're talking like an individual who does not expect to win.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where this incriminates him. And so when you look at it, look, Charles Barkley didn't win a championship. Patrick Ewing didn't win a championship. Karl Malone didn't win a championship. John Stockton didn't win a championship. There are a host of Reggie Miller didn't win a championship, etc., etc. They were striving to get there while playing. These words would have never come out of their mouth. And the fact that Melo would feel comfortable enough to say this when he's still averaging over 20 a game and in position where the Knicks are expected to make.
So what does that mean about Carmelo, Stephen?
Come out his mouth.
What does that mean about Carmelo?
Because
does he want it bad enough? Does he want it like Patrick Ewing wanted it?
That is a legit question, which is why I said I would never hold Chris Paul accountable for not having a championship the way I hold Melo, because Chris Paul is miniature. He's more of an orchestrator, but more importantly, he's a pit bull. And when he loses, he's not comfortable to be around. He's not somebody that you can talk to. He's that ticked off. And so if you're Melo, this is how this looks. And I'm telling you right now, if you know Melo, he's a high-end competitor. He's going to come at you. He's going to try to take you out the whole bit. So for him to say this quote, it's the antithesis of who he is, but it doesn't look that way right now. It looks very bad, and I cannot believe he said this. I do not believe he believes it, but it tells me that he's lacking a belief in the Knicks. And to some degree, he is lacking a belief in himself. And that is a problem.
We got to leave it there. And yes, maybe some of it's less about him, but it's more about the situation he's in and having to rationalize that it might not happen with that team, even though he wants it to. Bill Simmons asked former NFL running back Ricky Williams if he'd be in the Hall of Fame if weed was legal. Williams with a blunt response.
Would you have been a Hall of Famer if weed was legal?
For sure. No doubt about it.
For sure?
For sure.
Yeah. How come?
Well, I think one, because I look at the amount of stress and things that distracted me from playing football surrounding cannabis. And I look at the first half of my career when it was pretty much a secret. No one knew that I used, and I could do it, as I wished. And in the last part of my career, I think I would have started. I would have had more touches, and I think as it is right now, 11 seasons, over 10,000 yards.
Ricky Williams' full interview is available on HBO Go. Stephen A., bottom line.
Nope. Go to Max.
Oh.
I want to hear what Max has to say about this one.
Okay.
Go ahead. What's the
Max,
question?
Should the NFL test for weed?
No, I said this from my first show on First Take. Of course not. It's the ultimate hypocrisy that a league that is in bed with alcohol companies, they advertise beer during NFL games, right? Says, here, drink this. Alcohol, in all the studies, certainly societally, but even individually, is comparable to marijuana, but in fact has a greater negative impact on individuals and certainly societal impact than marijuana. If alcohol is the standard, then even legally, period, marijuana should be legal. But certainly the NFL, who chooses to test for marijuana, shouldn't be testing for it if they're taking money from alcohol companies. Don't tell me like one's legal and one's not illegal. Prohibition lifted on alcohol, and for various political reasons, it never lifted on marijuana. It was based on essentially lies and doctored pseudoscience. The fact that marijuana is a Schedule I drug, which means it's like the equivalent of heroin, the definition is that there's of a Schedule I drug, high chance for addiction, which is compared to real Schedule I drugs, simply not the case for marijuana. In fact, more the case for alcohol, and no accepted medical use because it hasn't been accepted by everyone, I suppose. That language gives them some wiggle room, but it's nonsense. Now, in terms of Ricky Williams, Stephen A., I understand why someone would say, it was my first reaction when it was going on too, like, dude, you're willing to give up your career, a Hall of Fame career, by the way. I agree with him, because you look at Thurman Thomas, Tony Dorsett, Marcus Allen, Marshall Faulk, O.J. Simpson, all in the Hall of Fame, all with fewer yards than Ricky Williams and in his first 5 seasons. And Ricky Williams, after that, started getting those weed suspensions. So I think he actually has a pretty good case. But if you say to yourself, as I did originally, hey, Ricky Williams, and I've said this is the irony of testing for weed in the NFL. It actually does catch the people with problems who happen to be addicted. Even if it's not considered a really addictive drug, if you can't stop using and you jeopardize your financial future and your career and everything you worked so hard for, it actually does indicate a problem, right? Except the more you think about it this way. You've already made some money. You've been in the league for a while. Oh, so Ricky Williams would rather smoke weed than play football. That on its face sounds ridiculous. But what if I said Ricky Williams would rather have a beer than get punched in the face? Who wouldn't rather have a beer than get punched in the face? Because that's the rough equivalent of smoking weed or playing football. After you've already made some money, football is bad for you. It's not something there are parts of it that are fun, but it requires incredible discipline and physical sacrifice and pain. If you said someone would rather have a beer or get punched in the face, they'd all tell you, give me the beer. Is this a trick question? But if you say, would you rather smoke weed or play football? Are you kidding? Football, of course. I don't see the difference.
Max Kellerman. Thank God you're not running this country. Thank God you're not running this company, because Lord knows what kind of state of affairs would exist. Let me tell you just a few of my personal experiences with people who have smoked some weed. Now, obviously, this isn't everybody. Obviously, some people may handle it differently. But let me just give you a taste, a couple of nuggets of my experience with people who have smoked weed. I was at an NBA game. I was covering a player on the Philadelphia 76ers during the Larry Brown era. It was not Allen Iverson, so I want to make sure I'm clear about that, because I know people would think that. It was not him. And Larry Brown went to the play and he said, 3 down, 3 down. And at the scorer's table in front of myself, the late Phil Jasner for the Philadelphia Daily News, God rest his soul, my colleague, I still miss him to this day, and a bunch of other guys. The player looked at Larry Brown and went like this. Huh? That's what he did. This is what happened. You see people, family members, for example, not my immediate family members, but family members, nevertheless, as the late Bernie Mac would say, we all got, screwed up people in our family. Don't act like some of your members ain't messed up too. Okay, I have family members that will puff and pass, whatever the case may be. You understand? Everything is slow. The world, everything is mellow. There's no level of urgency. They move at 2 speeds, slow and stop. When you think about Martin Lawrence, one of the greatest comedians ever, when he did his stand-up, you so crazy, talking about smoking some weed, and you start getting psychological and all of this other stuff, or philosophical rather. Water was glistening all over your body. That's what Martin Lawrence said. Everybody cracking up and laughing, because there's a level of mellow, there's a level of calm and cool and collectiveness, but no urgency, nothing hyper, nothing passionate. The world will be around tomorrow. That's my experience in all my years of watching people.
If that's the case, that'll show up on the field. If they can still ball, who cares?
Let me finish. Of watching people who smoke weed. So now we come to the big point of what I'm saying with the NFL. You're sitting there and saying don't test them. I'm like, wait a minute. If this in any way is deemed something that I believe as the NFL could compromise my product, what's the harm in me saying, no, you can't do that? You can't discipline yourself enough to not do it during 6 months of an NFL season? You really, your
keep
position,
catching stars,
you're
Stephen.
advocating.
Stephen A., they keep catching stars. These guys are playing well.
They can't hear both of us, bro. What are you saying? They should throw aside rules. They should just get rid of them, eradicate them, because the NFL players can't control. If you are one of the 1,600 plus NFL players, I want you to listen right now to what Max Kellerman and others are saying about y'all. We need to get rid of the rule because you can't discipline yourself enough to know I am going to cost myself millions of dollars. I ask you a question, Max Kellerman.
Okay.
Have you ever seen a joint? Have you ever seen a joint in your life that costs $1 million+?
Okay.
Kelly, take your time. I'll wait. Take your time. I'll wait.
Now, I want to
One
answer this.
joint.
Your argument is
joint.
centered on the fact that it has negative consequences for the behavior of those who use it. Of course, there's some negative consequences to it. Mark Kleiman, the professor who at UCLA and now I believe NYU, has studied this extensively and talks about how much like alcohol, most of alcohol sales are concentrated in a relatively few alcoholics. The same thing will happen with marijuana if you legalize it. There are negative consequences naturally, but your argument is it'll make them worse players in certain respects. Okay, but that'll show up on the field. And if they're not worse players on the field, why are you testing them in the first place? It doesn't make that'll show up in performance.
Because Max, because it's easier to hide. If I'm drinking brew, if I'm drinking a Budweiser Heineken or something like that, okay, particularly if I'm inebriated, that's something that's going to come across relatively obvious. In the case of weed, they want to test for it because obviously there are mechanisms in place where you could disguise that a bit more easily. I'm not an expert in this, but these are the kind of things that I've been told.
So if you can still play, so you're arguing it decreases performance. If your performance is still good enough that you're a star, that you're getting paid, so it decreased it, so what? You're still better than most.
I'm saying to you, I'm not debating the issue of alcohol versus weed. As far as I'm concerned, you can get rid of both of them for all I care.
No,
but don't tell me that a rule. Don't tell me that a rule should be eradicated because guys can't discipline themselves enough.
Incidentally, you know why partly they can't discipline themselves?
I have no problem with guys. I have no problem with people who want to do that stuff if they're working in a profession that it doesn't compromise them and cost them their money. But if you are an NFL player and that is the rule, and you can't control yourself enough and cost yourself millions, you're an idiot.
No, do you know why partly they can't discipline themselves? You talk about how they are consuming the marijuana. Like, for example, in blunts, that part is legal. The blunt paper is legal, meaning cigar paper, with high concentrations of nicotine, which is a proven, scientifically proven, highly addictive drug. Not marijuana, which is considered a non-addictive drug. Nicotine, the delivery system for the marijuana, could be, likely is in many of these cases, addicting the players, and that's the part, and breaking the willpower to discipline themselves. That's the part that's legal. You can legally acquire the nicotine in the tobacco paper, but you can't smoke the weed, which is, again, not as bad for you as the alcohol, which is also legal and is also essentially they're in bed with the NFL and broadcasters on this issue. I mean, it's so hypocritical, Stephen.
We have to go to break.
But I know it's hypocritical. What I'm saying is the fact that it's hypocritical is irrelevant. If the rule is in place and you can't control yourself enough and allow yourself to be cost millions of dollars because of it, you're a damn addict. You got a problem.
That's the irony of it
all.
There's
also the issue of pain, and you could argue that painkillers are more detrimental to a player's health than any form of marijuana.
Hey, basketball fans, I'm George Sedano on the latest NBA Lockdown podcast. Amin Al-Hassan, Israel Gutierrez, and I discuss everything that's going on with the Golden State Warriors. Yeah, even that picture, too. Plus Team USA. Subscribe to the podcast on the Listen tab of the ESPN app.
Eagle fans got their first look at their quarterback of the future last night against the Bucks. Carson Wentz entered to a very warm welcome in the city of brotherly love, played in 2+ quarters, throwing for 89 yards with a pick and ran for 15 yards. So Eagle starter Sam Bradford played in only one series last night before backup Chase Daniel played most of the first half. Stephen A., how long before Wentz takes that job from Bradford?
I definitely think it's going to be by week 8. Just knowing the city of Philadelphia the way that I do, writing for the Philadelphia Inquirer for 16 plus years, being in that city, knowing how rabid they are about their Philadelphia Eagles, phenomenal sports town in every sense of the word. I think that when you look at the level of adulation that they showed towards Carson Wentz when he entered the game, it just speaks volume. Number one, they got issues. Their offensive line is a problem. Lane Johnson's going to get suspended for about 10 games. Coach Doug Peterson has already alerted everybody that they got to prepare themselves for Plan B. Number two, they showed an inability to protect the quarterback. Chase Daniels, the backup quarterback, familiar with Doug Peterson's system from his Kansas City days, got sacked 4 times, although that was primarily by backups protecting him. Nevertheless, it's a problem. When you look at the NFC East, what's expected of the Cowboys, the Giants' improved defense, the Washington Redskins coming off a 9-7 season when a vast majority of their individuals are still in play on both sides of the ball, and they added Josh Norman to that secondary. And offensively, Jordan Reed has become a stud with Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon expected to be ready for week 1 with Kirk Cousins expected to do some things. You're looking at the Philadelphia Eagles as potential cellar dwellers. The more they lose, the more you're going to see the catcalls for Carson Wentz, who's got good size on him, showed good mobility and arm strength in terms of scrambling out of the pocket, throwing on the run, things of that nature. I think the combination of his ability along with the city's aspirations and the expected troubles that they're going to have, even though defensively, I believe they can get at the quarterback this year, and they'll be better defensively now than they were under Chip Kelly. You just find yourself believing that somehow, some way, the Eagles may end up in last place, at least for the first half of the season, and as a result, that's going to put more pressure on them to call for Carson Wentz, especially since he's third string. He's behind Chase Daniels as well as Sam Bradford, and you're going to have a lot of people looking at the way Chase Daniels performed last night and saying, why isn't Carson Wentz, Chase Daniel, they're going to say, why isn't he ahead of him on a depth chart? I think the fact that he's so low on a depth chart right now, which means he wouldn't even dress on Sundays, I think that's a problem, and I think that you'll see people clamoring for him, and the Eagles are not going to have any choice. I give it by week 8 at the latest, possibly earlier, then we'll see Carson Wentz in there as the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles.
I can't argue with any of that analysis, Stephen A., and especially given your finger on the pulse of Philadelphia, even now, having covered, having worked at a paper there for so long, you understand what that town is about. That no city has more passionate or angrier sports fans than Philadelphia, particularly as it relates to the Eagles. So your analysis about the pressure that's going to be brought to bear on the organization as they are likely cellar dwellers, I agree with all that. And I also agree with the kind of perception of Carson Wentz. He's big, he's strong, he has a big arm, he's mobile, he's everything he's from central casting at quarterback. He looks the part. Here's the problem with Carson Wentz. And by the way, also, the Eagles invested enormous resources in order to pick Carson Wentz. They move up to the second slot. Here's the problem. The Rams devoted even more resources to move up to the number 1 slot. And they moved to L.A., and they needed a franchise quarterback, and they had their choice. They were the ones who were doing the choosing. And they looked at Wentz, and they looked at Goff, and although a lot of people thought, well, maybe they'll go with Wentz, he looks the part. He has more kind of combine-type tangible stuff. When they actually looked into the numbers, when they actually did the analysis, where Wentz struggled in college? Pressured dropbacks. You know what that tells me? He has everything, but the question is, does his processor, does his CPU work fast enough? What do we always hear about the pro game and how it's different from college? The speed of the game. If he can't think quickly enough in college, I'm not saying that he can't learn with experience, but if that's the red flag on him, if that's why the Rams go with Goff over Wentz, if that's the red flag as a rookie, and you have Sam Bradford, who, over the course of his career, when he's been healthy, has been a low-average quarterback. But low average in the NFL is actually a pretty good player. Quarterback's extremely competitive. And Bradford was also a better college quarterback, by the way, than Wentz. But at any rate, Bradford will process the information better. I mean, he has a track record of it, etc. And even if they get to be cellar dwellers and they start clamoring for a change, who would you rather use as a tackling dummy? The veteran quarterback nearing the end of a contract, even though it's a short-term contract, the way the Giants did with Kurt Warner. Here, Kurt Warner behind this porous offensive line. Go take all the hits. We're going to protect Eli. Would you rather use Bradford as a tackling dummy or the number 2 pick that you've invested all those resources in as a tackling dummy, especially when you don't know if he can process the information fast enough to really make a difference as a rookie?
Well, first of all, here's what you're missing. You're missing the fact that the NFC East is religiously competitive. Even when you're a cellar dweller, you're usually not that far behind. So chances are, even at the midway point, they're still going to be competitive. When you take that into account, expecting rather that the Philadelphia Eagles defense will be better, it's one thing if they're horrific and you're just throwing Carson Wentz to the wolves, because you're not going to sacrifice your future in that regard. But if you feel that you have a chance, there is no coach or no organization that's going to ignore the fact that they owe it to those players out there competing who still have positioned them to have a shot at success, and they're going to ignore all of that just because they want to protect Carson Wentz by sitting him on the bench.
But then why would you sit Bradford if you're having enough success that you're within spitting distance of a playoff berth? Then you wouldn't you wouldn't bench Bradford.
No, because I'm assuming when I say success, what I mean is if your defense is good and you're highly competitive, but your offense ain't getting it done and Bradford's not getting it done, and you've got a city like Philadelphia clamoring. Now, if everybody around you collectively ain't getting it done, that's different. But if the Eagles' defense is playing well, if their running game is good, if you're watching film and receivers are getting open, but Sam Bradford is tap dancing in the pocket, or he's not showing the requisite leadership, or he seems to be distant and gone because he really wanted to get traded to Denver, but his agent wasn't able to pull off that deal and close the deal with John Elway, and you're reminiscing about the fact that he really didn't want to be here anyway because Carson Wentz arrived, then you sit up there and you just call it a day and you roll with Carson Wentz under those conditions.
I think that's probably right. By the way, I know it's preseason. I don't care that much, but you got to complete more than 50% of your passes, Carson Wentz. Got to do it, and it's not NFL caliber.
He will.
Alex Rodriguez will play his farewell game against the Tampa Bay Rays at Yankee Stadium. He'll then be released and join the team as a special advisor and instructor. Rodriguez asked to play third base for old time's sake Friday night, but the request was denied.
I wanted to play third base. I thought that, CeCe's on the mound, a lot of history there. I thought it would have been a fun way to go out, and I think the fans of New York specifically remember me more as a third baseman. Again, I thought that I could at least make the routine plays. I've done it for a long time. It would have been fun. It would have been excited for me and our fans, I think. But I asked the question, and Joe just said no.
I mean, we thought about it, but, he hasn't done any work. And we're still in the business of trying to win games here.
Joe just shutting it down. Stephen A., what does this say about A-Rod?
Well, it says he's not wanted. It says that the Yankees have no problem with humiliating him and that it seems to be a bit deliberate. Now, I'm not about to sit up here and tell you that the A-Rod doesn't deserve his comeuppance in some regard. The kind of things that he did, lying perpetually, being the serial liar that he was, being as fake and phony as he was, cheating twice, suing baseball and the Players Association and the Yankees organization and team doctors and all of this other stuff. He's brought most of this on himself, and he certainly didn't help himself just the other day when my man Don LaGreca right here at ESPN New York on Michael Kay's show, I think it was yesterday or the day before, asked if he had returned Derek Jeter's phone call, and A-Rod initially answered who? As it, like he didn't know, or then Don LaGreca tried to make sure he heard him, so he asked again, and then A-Rod talked about how his plate has been full and he hasn't had time, and then ultimately he'd get back to him, which is ridiculous. He just showed his flagrant stupidity when he did that. I mean, talk about being stupid. I mean, that's one of those things where, to do that to Derek Jeter, you're lucky Derek Jeter gave you a damn phone call. So once again, A-Rod has hurt himself. There's no doubt about this. But I hearken back to what I originally said. Joe Girardi, Hal Steinbrenner, Brian Cashman, and those guys, whether on the podium or via phone call for Michael Kay's radio show in New York, they said they fully supported Alex Rodriguez. They talked about what he meant to the organization. They said that he could play or he could do what he wants until Friday. That has not been the case. And I'm sick and tired of Joe Girardi. As much as I respect this man because he's a great manager, I'm sick and tired of him being so rigid all the time and acting like, you know what, this farewell tour is not something that you're used to. You did it the last 2 years. Derek Jeter and Mariano Rivera. Let's not, now A-Rod doesn't compare to them. We all understand that. All right? But then don't show up in a press conference with your crocodile tears acting like you'll do anything for the guy because you're going to love him just as much as you loved those other guys. You either don't feel that way, or if you do feel that way, then treat him the way you said you were going to treat him.
Okay, what does
He's
this say?
not doing that, and the Yankees are wrong.
What does this say about A-Rod? Let me start with what it says about the Yankees. The Yankees played Jeter not only because he's the great Derek Jeter, what he means to the franchise, but he was still a major league caliber player. A below average major league shortstop in the field, at the plate, and on the bases, yes, but still above or at replacement level major league value. Rivera was still actually basically an elite closer his last season. You can play those guys. What this says about the Yankees, before we get to A-Rod even, is that they're only 3.5 out of the wild card race. They're still in it. I mean, yes, Andrew Miller's gone and Chapman's gone and Beltran's gone, and it's unlikely, given their roster and the fact that they are 3.5 out, that they will make the playoffs, but much stranger things have happened than a still pretty decent team. Wherever you look, the Yankees get like average, at least major league production from all their positions. Not a lot of stars on offense, but, you know, they can get it done. 3.5 back, sure, it could happen. So they're trying to still play for something. That's what it says about the Yankees. What it says about A-Rod is he's not a major league player anymore. He can't hit, he can't run, he can't field. He can't do it. In fact, he's not a major league player anymore. Therefore, they are forcing him to retire in the middle of a season. He's so bad, they're like, look, dude, we owe you all this money, but you're so bad at baseball by major league standards at this point, we don't even want you to finish the season. He can't make all 12 rounds. He's getting stopped in like the 8th round. The ref has seen enough. That's what it really means about A-Rod. Can't play.
Well, you're saying that, but you're acting like we're arguing about the quality of talent that A-Rod is at this point. We are not. What we're saying is this is his last game. If this were Derek Jeter, as bad as A-Rod. If this was Mariano Rivera, as bad as A-Rod. I'm trying to tell you what the argument is that the Yankees wouldn't be doing this to them. Now, A-Rod doesn't deserve to be treated the way that they're treated. We all get that. But that's not what they said. What they wanted, they came before the media trying to gloss over everything, acting like there was this love affair, this refound love affair with Alex Rodriguez, where that clearly wasn't the case. So the real crime in all of this, other than A-Rod's ineptitude, is the Yankees being their lying selves, acting like there's so much affection for a dude that they can't wait to get the hell out of their clubhouse.
You're talking about
that's
exceptions.
What this is.
Jeter and Rivera were exceptions. Lou Gehrig, you know, as he declined because of the disease, that's an exception. Babe Ruth finished his career with the Boston Braves because on the Yankees, when you can't play, they get you out of there. They don't care who you are. Babe Ruth finished in Boston.
I'm simply saying they wasted our time with the damn press conference for Alex Rodriguez, who they don't give a damn about, and they want it gone. That's what this is about, which means there's no way on earth he should have been allowed to retire on Friday. She should have kicked his butt out that day. They should have never let him play it again, and they shouldn't have wasted our time with a damn press conference.
Oh, you can give him a going away game. Give him a last game. You don't have to play the third base.
The Swan song.
Which is why I said, then let him play tonight.
Yep.
That's exactly why I said that. Let him play tonight if that's what you're doing.
You don't put him in the field.
Why
I mean,
not?
you still want to win the game. Give him some at-bats.
What you tell us he can do what he wants for? What you tell us he could do what he wants for?
Well, that was a mistake they made. Okay, but
they were lying.
But don't throw good money after bad. You know, don't double down on it because you made a mistake. Good. Cut your losses if you're the Yankees.
How about not lying about somebody who wasn't worth lying about to begin with?
Oh, that I agree.
So, the NFL preseason kicked off last night. All eyes were on the quarterback situation in New England and Denver. Jimmy G played the entire first half for the Pats against New Orleans. I do that just to annoy Stephen A. Throwing for 168 yards with no touchdowns and no picks. And Mark Sanchez threw for 99 yards with a TD and a pick in 3 series against the Bears. Max Kellerman, which fan base should be more encouraged after last night's performance?
Well, I understand why some would say New England. Because you go, all right, Brady's missing 4 games. All Garoppolo has to do is be a game manager. Can you get 2 wins out of him? And then the greatest quarterback ever, who was playing at near MVP level last year, comes back and everything's good. Look, am I surprised that Garoppolo is a decent game manager at the least? No. Did I think Bill Belichick would have anything less backing up Tom Brady on the roster? No. Don't forget, last year, early in the season, people were like, hey, if Brady's getting old, maybe Garoppolo takes. I mean, Garoppolo obviously has some talent. The much more important thing here is for the Broncos. The Broncos, who just won the Super Bowl behind an amazing defense, lost 2 quarterbacks, both their quarterbacks, Osweiler and Peyton Manning. Now, Peyton was so mediocre last year that Osweiler took his job before, and he was so mediocre, he lost it back to Peyton. All they need is a game manager. So if you look at Mark Sanchez and say, can he still manage a game? Or better yet, be a game manager plus some playmaking ability with that Broncos defense? We saw what they could do last year. Early indications are yes, and so Broncos fans should be more encouraged. They need it more.
You're wrong. It's about Jimmy Garoppolo. And Jimmy Garoppolo is because what you're looking at him, you're simply asking yourself one question. Can he do it? Can he do it for us for 4 games? 4 games before Tom Brady returns. That's really what you wanted to see. And the fact that he was able to go out there and to do the kind of things that he did and to show the promise, the maturation, etc., that you would want to see from somebody who's been under Belichick's wing for a little while with some decent arm strength to boot, that definitely resonates and it goes a long way. You don't feel that way against Mark Sanchez because you can't. He's somebody whose history you can't ignore nor let go of. Because when it comes to Mark Sanchez, it's not that he can't throw touchdowns. It's not that he can't move chains. It's not that he can't put up points. It's not that he can't make big plays. It's not that he can't win a few games for you. It's that what can go wrong usually will. At the most inopportune time. And even in a preseason game, you arguably against suspect talent because everybody weren't playing their A players, you had Mark Sanchez go out there and throw in interceptions. Is it a big deal? No. But it potentially could be because it's Mark Sanchez. And that's what we're talking about here. Jimmy Garoppolo is an enigma. You're waiting to see what he can do, but you have promise because he's Jimmy Garoppolo. He's under Tom Brady. He's being tutored and guided by Bill Belichick and your offensive coordinator. And you have that going on in a system that's tried and proven. In the case of Mark Sanchez, it's a new landing spot with the same old Mark Sanchez.
I always think Mark Sanchez
but not so.
I always think he's a dangerous player to have on your roster. You can create a quarterback controversy where you don't need one if you have a weak quarterback or something less than a star at QB. He's good enough to make you believe in him, and over the long run really isn't quite starting caliber. But a lot of that's because, look, the last time he was really effective, he played for the Jets. And what did the Jets have? A really good defense, and they just asked him to not do too much. And you know what? AFC Championship appearance. If he's on a team with a really good defense and he's just asked not to do too much, then maybe he becomes a less dangerous player, and the Broncos and Elway have found something that's good enough for them.
How many years has Mark Sanchez been in the league?
Off the top of my head, 8 or 9. What is
he's been in the league since 2000. He's been in the league since 2009, so that's when the Jets went to the AFC Championship game.
7, 8.
Mark said the 2008, 2009, at least 7, 8 years.
Yep.
Max Kellerman, you just used the word maybe 3 times. Is there anything else to talk about? You just used the word maybe.
Yeah.
With a guy that's been around that should have maybes.
That's why the Broncos fans should be more encouraged, because it is a maybe. If he gives you some good evidence, you should be more encouraged about it.
So the reigning Super Bowl defending champion should be happy that maybe gets attached to that quarterback's name 3 times on national television.
Really? Against Miami, we're going to see Eli Apple, Sterling Shepard. Get fired up, people. Have a wonderful weekend. We will see you on Monday. Stephen A. Max, have a great weekend. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Catch First Take weekdays, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific on ESPN2. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you all Monday.
This weekend, one of baseball's fiercest rivalries heats up at Wrigley Field. Matt Holliday and the St. Louis Cardinals face Chris Bryant and the Chicago Cubs. Saturday at 1:45 Eastern and Sunday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio.